I need everyone to pay very close attention right now, because what I'm about to tell you is going to change how you think about the Republican Party. 23 House Republicans, 23 of them have announced they're leaving Congress. They're retiring, they're resigning, they're running for other offices, they're getting out. And this isn't happening slowly over time. This is happening right now all at once in a mass exodus that's shaking the GOP to its core. This is not normal. This is not business as usual. This is a crisis. And the timing could not be worse for President Trump and his agenda. Are you kidding me with this? The Republican Party is literally falling apart from the inside, and most people aren't even paying attention to it. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Appealing the entire special master process to the 11th Circuit, and they've asked for emergency consideration, so that's going down the track. If the appeals court rules in their favor, the special master will go away. But again, all this is a little bit of a sideshow to the real meat of the investigation, which is the FBI interviewing witnesses, trying to find out what happened to those highly sensitive documents at Mar-a-Lago, and even more importantly, whether Donald Trump or anyone around him obstructed justice. Once they had a grand jury subpoena asking for classified documents, did they try to hide any of those documents?
Let me put this in perspective for you. 23 Republicans leaving. Compare that to just 17 Democrats who have announced departures. The party that's supposed to be in control, the party that's supposed to be unified behind Trump, is hemorrhaging members at a rate that far exceeds the opposition. And here's the thing that really gets me. This number is expected to grow. We're told that after the holidays, after people have had time to think about their futures, more announcements are coming. More Republicans are going to bail. More members of Trump's own party are going to look at the situation and decide they want no part of it. This wave isn't cresting yet. It's still building, and nobody knows how bad it's going to get before it's over. And we're not just talking about random backbenchers here. We're not talking about people nobody's ever heard of quietly slipping out the back door. We're talking about big names, high-profile members, people who have been fixtures of the Trump movement. Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of the most visible and vocal Trump supporters in the entire Congress, just resigned, effective January 5th, 2026. She's done. And when she announced it, she didn't hold back. She blasted her own party's approach to healthcare. She blasted their approach to foreign policy. She blasted other matters she disagreed with. This is Marjorie Taylor Greene, the woman who has been ride or die for Trump since day one, saying she can't do this anymore. If that doesn't tell you how bad things have gotten inside the Republican caucus, I don't know what will.
Hello good people, and welcome back again to our channel. Thank you so much to our supporters. We really appreciate the love and support. If you're new here, welcome home. Please be sure to take a second and hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell so that anytime we upload a video, you'll be the first one to know. So, my people, it is not a good day in office for the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, because 23 of Republicans just announced moving to Congress, and this is a big crisis for Donald Trump. Because what does this really mean for him? It means that the House will have to take an early recess, will also be pressured to unite the Republicans, which I believe he's already failed. 23 of them have already announced they are leaving. It also means that he will greatly lose his impact or his influence within the party, which he has already lost. And also it exposes his political risks, because if the Republicans remain divided, then he will not be able to move key legislations forward. And this is not good news for him. So I believe that this is a very strong message being sent here, because what the people are saying is that they are tired, and enough is enough. Let's dive deeper into this topic with watching the following videos. Let's get into the videos. Thank you so much. Please be sure to tell me your thoughts in the comment section, and I will be sure to reply try my best to check them all. Please, if you have not subscribed again, take just a second and subscribe to our channel. Let's grow together and let's keep it here. Let's get into the videos.
Bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
A symbolic victory for Democrats. The House votes 230 to 196 to bring back for 3 years enhanced Affordable Care Act subsidies.
So, there was this vote yesterday, and it turned out with 230 yeas and 196 nays, which means the bill passed. Without any objections, they laid the motion to reconsider on the table right then and there. Everywhere you looked, Republicans seemed to be rising up against Donald Trump, who's definitely not the most popular guy these days. It was quite something to see MAGA Republicans teaming up with Democrats on the House floor to extend the Affordable Care Act subsidies. 17 Republicans crossed the aisle to back this move, making things a bit interesting in the House of Representatives. Now, it's headed to the Senate, where Trump will likely do his best to stop those subsidies from getting to his desk, fully intending to veto them. But that's not all that happened. Just the day before, the Senate agreed unanimously to put up a plaque honoring law enforcement at the Capitol for the January 6th insurrection. Republican Senator Thom Tillis, who's not running for re-election, worked alongside Democrats on this, and good for him for stepping up. The Democrats were really pushing for this plaque, while the MAGA faction was trying to block it, with the infamous MAGA Mike Johnson leading the charge in the House. The Department of Justice even filed documents arguing that a law passed in 2023 to officially establish this memorial plaque was unlawful, and MAGA Mike echoed that sentiment. However, it seems like Trump's fabrications about January 6th were just too much for even some MAGA Republicans, including Senate Majority Leader John Thune. With Thom Tillis collaborating with the Democrats, they finally managed to convince the Senate to agree to put up the January 6th plaque on their side. But MAGA Mike wouldn't budge in the House. He just doesn't want any sort of memorial honoring the police officers who were the true heroes that day. As Scott McFarlane noted, one of the reporters keeping tabs on the plaque situation, there's talk that this plaque could even hang in the third-floor visitor area. On January 6th, things were quite the spectacle. Recently, there was a bipartisan resolution about war powers in the Senate, aimed at putting limits on Donald Trump's military actions in Venezuela. It passed by 52 votes to 47, with a handful of Republican senators, including Markowski, Young, Paul, Collins, and Hawley, teaming up with the Democrats. Tim Kaine spearheaded that bill, backed by co-sponsors like Senator Schiff. Then there was a significant move in the House, too. 17 Republican House members decided to join forces with the Democrats to extend subsidies for the Affordable Care Act. Naturally, Trump has made it clear he plans to block and veto that.
The yeas are 52, the nays are 47. The motion is agreed to. The joint resolution will be placed on the calendar.
With this tension brewing, the J6 plaque is also part of the ongoing conversation. Switching gears a bit, Democrats and Republicans in the Senate even hosted ambassadors from Denmark and Greenland to discuss Trump's previous talk of invading Greenland, just to reassure them that they have support. It's quite telling how, in both the House and Senate, there's a noticeable push against Trump's influence. In a recent interview on state regime media, Trump admitted to Sean Hannity that he might face some tough times in the upcoming midterms. He seems to sense that the MAGA Republicans are losing their grip, and it could get pretty messy for him. Just the way he put it.
It's an amazing phenomenon that on 2 or 3 occasions, I don't know, it depends on how far you want to go back, but if you go back a long way, the sitting president, whether it's Democrat or Republican, always loses the midterm, even if they've done well, almost always. And, you know, you'd think it would be like a 50-50 deal. Even if the president's done a great job, I think we've done a great job. We've done maybe the best job ever in the first year. But they always seem to lose the midterm. There's something down deep psychologically with the voters that they want maybe a check or something. I don't know what it is exactly.
There's this deep-seated psychological thing going on where they might want a check on power or something like that. Take Senator Tillis from North Carolina, for instance. He's not running for re-election, but he made some interesting remarks on CNN about Donald Trump's threats toward NATO.
It's very important for the NATO alliance to know that we have their back because they've had ours. we're the only country that has benefited from the Article 5 commitment in Afghanistan, where treasure and lives have been lost by our allies. We owe them respect, and we need to make it very clear that our strength and our ability to project power, to stand off against Putin, to stand off Russia, stand off China, Iran, it all rests on this exquisite capability that we have under NATO.
It really should be clear why NATO is so crucial, and he didn't hold back in calling Trump out for his comments against our allies. And let's see what Senator Tillis has to say about Stephen Miller next. Talking about Stephen Miller, it feels like he really needs to step up or step out.
Do you want Stephen Miller to lose his job?
Look, either Stephen Miller needs to get into a lane where he knows what he's talking about or get out of his job. Look, the reason why I thought it was important for me to make a comment on the floor is I've been the Republican leader of the Senate NATO Observer Group since 2018. There is no more important alliance than the NATO alliance. And Denmark has punched above its weight. It came to Afghanistan, lost 43 soldiers on the ground, fought in some of the most contested regions, honoring their Article 5 commitment to the United States.
I think they lost more soldiers than any other country per capita.
Per capita, they did. And Jake, they were in among the NATO allies at the time. It was 30 nations. They were among the top 6. And think about all the nations bigger than them. So to have the Prime Minister suggest that they have to be prepared for some sort of action by the United States suggests to me that Mr. Miller does not know anything about the alliance, the importance of it. And, you know, generals, I was on Senate Armed Services for 8 years, and generals would always say the same thing. The only thing worse than going to war with allies is going to war without allies. This alliance is critically important. Shaking that alliance sends a signal to Putin that he's winning, and Stephen Miller doesn't represent the U.S. government. He represents the Article 2 branch, and I, as a member of the U.S. Senate, get to weigh into this issue, and I know, whether they say it out loud or not, most of my colleagues agree with me.
And then there's Republican Congress member Bacon from Nebraska. He's also not running for re-election, but he weighed in on Donald Trump's eyebrow-raising threat to invade Greenland.
The White House just reiterated that U.S. military action to acquire Greenland is not off the table. Have you talked to anybody in the White House, President Trump, Secretary of State Rubio, or anyone else in the administration about this?
Well, not since Miller's comment yesterday, but I hope Republicans stand up against this, universally oppose and give the feedback to the president, because this is appalling. Greenland is a NATO ally. We have a base on Greenland. We could put 4 or 5 bases on Greenland. They wouldn't mind that. They would make agreements with us on mining. Denmark is one of our best friends. They had more people per capita die in Afghanistan and Iraq fighting for us in Iraq and Afghanistan. So they're a proven ally. So the way we're treating them is really demeaning, and it has no upside. All it does is making our NATO allies angry. It's creating distrust, and there is no upside to it, and we're not going to acquire Greenland. I know most people in Greenland want to remain independent Greenland, with Denmark providing some protection, and they count on us. We're NATO allies. We have bases there, and we can build on that. So this is one of the silliest things I have heard come out of the White House in the last year, and it's unacceptable, and I hope other Republicans line up behind me and make it clear to the White House it's wrong.
He mentioned that the White House recently said military action to acquire Greenland isn't off the table, and he hoped that Republicans would strongly oppose this idea. To him, it's downright appalling, since Greenland is a NATO ally, and we already have a base there with the potential for more. You know, it's honestly hard to believe some of the things that have been coming out of the White House lately. Take Denmark, for example. They've always been one of our closest allies, and they've lost more people per capita fighting alongside us in Iraq and Afghanistan than many others. So the way we're treating them right now feels really disrespectful and just doesn't make any sense. It's not just demeaning, it's also stirring up anger among our NATO allies and creating trust issues. And let's be real, we're not going to acquire Greenland. Most folks there prefer to stay independent, with Denmark looking out for them. We've got NATO bases there and could build on that relationship instead of undermining it. Recently, I heard Jesse Ventura, former governor of Minnesota, share a perspective that really resonated with me. He's not a Republican or a Democrat. He's an independent and a Vietnam veteran.
You want to know something? I'll give you a quote. We're a third world country now. You want to know why? I'm an expert. I've been to them. I spent 17 months in Southeast Asia while the draft dodger was playing golf, right? You know how I know we're a third world country? Because in third world countries, they have the military doing their police work in the cities when you walk around. I was in the Philippines the day Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law and went under dictatorship. We went from nobody to a guy with a machine gun on every corner. That's what happens in a dictatorship. In comes the military. That's what's happening here. And people better wake up to it. You want to read something? Then read your history of Germany and start comparing the tactics of what happened in 1930s Germany to what's happening here. Read history. You learn from history. And this is nothing new. This is all repeated. This is a game plan, it looks like to me, of what's going on here. How dare Minnesota, we'll take care of ourselves. We don't need federal troops coming in here without warrants.
He was visiting a high school near Minneapolis where students were peacefully protesting against ICE. His support for those students showed his commitment to standing up for the community, and it's pretty refreshing to hear his thoughts on Trump. He brought some moral clarity to the conversation, which I find admirable. He mentioned how schools are supposed to be places of learning where students understand fundamental rights and laws, like the Constitution. Instead, he argued we're veering away from that. Now, if we look at another angle, there's the media trying to stir things up in Minnesota. Laura Ingraham was talking to people there, asking why they were wearing masks, and people were like, because my nose is cold. It's just a humorous moment that shows how disconnected some of these conversations can be.
Why are you wearing a mask? Why are you wearing a mask?
Because my nose is cold. Why do you care if I'm wearing a mask?
I'm just curious. Just a question.
Agitated!
This is the crowd, and they apparently are policing their borders. So they're
I find myself really curious about why some people are still wearing masks. It's a question that's on my mind as I watch the crowd around me. They seem a bit agitated, as if there's a lot going on beneath the surface. It's interesting to see how people are managing their boundaries, especially these days.
Donald Trump is facing a revolt by members of his own party. MAGA Republicans have finally returned to Congress after a 2-week recess, and instantly they are revolting against Donald Trump. Remember how Donald Trump made some of his MAGA puppets introduce legislation honoring Donald Trump? Well, other members in the Republican Party right now, they are killing those pieces of legislation one by one. You see, what happened was, and MAGA Mike's got a revolt on his hand, these Republicans went back to their home districts during this MAGA Mike induced recess, and they got an earful. They got screamed at by their constituents. You promised us no more never-ending wars. You promised us you were going to bring down inflation and make things affordable and improve our health care. Instead, you've taken away our health care. Inflation is surging. Things are far less affordable, and war is back against Iran, this catastrophic and unlawful war that no one in the United States except Donald Trump and his neocon warhawks want to be involved in. Scott MacFarlane, who leads the Midas Touch Network's DC bureau, just filed the following report. GOP's Trump adoration legislation is collapsing into obscurity. Remember when MAGA Republicans introduced the following pieces of legislation? Well, one by one, these pieces of legislation are getting killed as MAGA revolts against Donald Trump. They can't even pick up 2 or 3 co-sponsors amongst their MAGA base because the people back at home said, stop naming things after Donald Trump. We're suffering. Stop with this crap. So let me tell you what's being killed right now. Minting a $250 bill currency with Trump's portrait on the bill. Minting a $100 bill currency with Trump's portrait on the bill. Renaming Dulles International Airport to Donald J. Trump International Airport. Carving Donald Trump's likeness onto Mount Rushmore. Creating and awarding a Donald Trump Peace Prize inside the State Department. Creating a federal holiday for Donald Trump's birthday. Awarding a Congressional Gold Medal to Donald Donald Trump, formally honoring Donald Trump for achieving peace in the Middle East, formally recognizing Donald Trump's role as a transformational peacemaker whose achievements in international diplomacy merit the Nobel Peace Prize, ordering federal health officials to launch a formal study into Trump derangement syndrome, formally authorizing construction of the Trump Ballroom, a House resolution formally acknowledging the positive impact that Donald Trump has had on America, and even more. But those were some of the highlights. Remember when we reported when those things were introduced by MAGAs? Remember when they were like, we're making everyone's life better. This is what the American people want. Nope. When these MAGA Republicans just went back to their home districts, they were told, you better not do that. You better do something when it comes to affordability, because you are forcing us into the worst economic conditions of our lives, and you are destroying future generations. So Donald Trump is livid right now that this MAGA revolt has happened right away. Trump has summoned MAGA Mike Johnson to the White House, where they will be meeting very shortly today. One of the other things that MAGA Mike has to deal with too is that Donald Trump is now demanding $350 billion in emergency funding for the Defense Department, which he unlawfully calls the War Department, because it has fully run out of money. Yep, Donald Trump is now escalating this war against Iran, which has always been unlawful and catastrophic. We've depleted our munitions. We've depleted our strategic petroleum reserves. We're out of money. And now Donald Trump is saying to MAGA Mike, if we don't pass a supplemental or reconciliation for $300 and $350 billion for the Defense Department, we go broke and you're going to strand us over there in the catastrophic and unlawful war that I just escalated once again. So we've got that going on. And then Trump says, oh, by the way, you need to also make sure you combine the $350 billion supplemental for the Iran war to also pay past bills and to escalate this war with what Trump calls the Save America Act, which is his voter suppression act. He said, we need one gigantic, beautiful bill, which was the disastrous bill that destroyed so many people's lives, ripped away healthcare. Donald Trump and MAGA Mike are like, you know how the Americans love the one big, beautiful bill? No, everybody hates that. It's like the most hated thing. We need to do another one right now with more hundreds of billions of dollars so that Trump and Netanyahu can further commit genocide and further bomb the Middle East. So here's what MAGA Mike's doing, because MAGA Mike is in a panic. So he's got to, try to change the topic. And so here's MAGA Mike trying to mimic his Führer, Donald Trump. MAGA Mike goes, the communists are inside the gates. It's time for all freedom-loving Americans to stand and be counted and help us defeat this madness. By God's grace, we will. There's a communist takeover right now. This is a serious threat. There are Marxists. It's communism. It's socialism. They want to abolish all borders. They want to abolish all prisons. They want to defund the police. They want to abolish the entire United States Senate. What else you got, MAGA Mike? Let's just post a photo of an immigrant and a young girl who was involved in a horribly tragic situation, and let's use that in order to attack Democrats and to politicize a tragic situation which should not be politicized. It should just be recognized for the tragedy it is. So MAGA Mike posts this with the help of Regime Media, New York Post. It's a photo of an immigrant with a young girl who got killed. And MAGA Mike goes, heartbreaking stories like these remind us of the horrific impact of the Biden border crisis that it continues to have on the American people. Yet Democrats want to reopen the border all over again. We must keep the border secure. American lives depend on it. Hey, MAGA Mike, you do realize that when former President Biden was in office, the Democrats and the Republicans came up with a bipartisan immigration bill for strong borders to make sure that anyone who is involved in any criminal activity gets brought to justice or deported and put in prison, and obviously subject to due process because that exists, but to make sure that there's justice served. that there would be compassion and a pathway to citizenship for people who are here lawfully, who contributed to society, who paid their taxes, and to have an expedited asylum system. But guess what? You and Donald Trump and others killed the bill because you wanted to create the problem so you can run on dividing the country. Also, speaking of running on dividing the country, as I opened up this article to see what was actually going on, here's the headline: 3-time deported illegal immigrant charged with killing North Carolina girl 6 after running a stop sign. And so what this is about is, it says, an illegal immigrant from Mexico with multiple deportations was driving with a revoked license when he collided with a vehicle and allegedly killed a 6-year-old North Carolina girl last week. And so it's on July 3rd, this individual failed to stop at a stop sign and struck an SUV driven by 35-year-old Kelly Toller, who was traveling with her 2 children. Absolutely a horrific and tragic situation. My heart goes out to the Toller family, to anybody who's experienced this. The pain and agony you must be going through and experiencing is unfathomable, and it truly breaks my heart. But MAGA Mike is saying this story is why Democrats, like, I don't, that you're using that tragic situation to attack Democrats who were trying to work with Republicans to pass a bipartisan immigration bill that Donald Trump killed. I mean, just think about the desperate tactics that these MAGAs are using now as they head back to the House of Representatives.
You know, it's funny what I decide to get picky about. The last time I got coffee, it took me about 5 reviews before I landed on my spot. But life insurance, well, most of us took the first quote that we got and called it done. SelectQuote is a life insurance broker that does the homework for you. Their licensed agents shop over 100 policies and find you a better rate for free. With SelectQuote, getting life insurance is fast, free, and easy. The whole process takes about 15 minutes. Answer a few questions, their agents shop the carriers for you, and you get your quote tailored to your specific situation, even if you've got something like high blood pressure or diabetes. And you'll save an average of 30%. So let's do the math on that. If a policy costs $150 per month, 30% off is $45 a month back in your pocket. Over a 20-year term, that's more than $10,000. SelectQuote has been doing this for over 40 years. 11,000 reviews on Trustpilot, rated excellent. Listen, putting off life insurance could get really costly. Also, it messes with your peace of mind. Now that I know that my family is covered, I can sleep more peacefully at night. Get your free quote at selectquote.com/Midas. That's selectquote.com/Midas, selectquote.com/Midas. They shop, you save.
Oh, and here's a doozy. MAGA Mike is bragging about the Road to Housing Act, which now became law, which Donald Trump refused to sign, and he protested. The one piece of bipartisan affordability legislation, Trump protested it and refused to sign it. It became law because he didn't veto it. And if you refuse to sign it after 10 days, it automatically becomes law. But MAGA Mike goes, the 21st Century Road to Housing Act is now law. House Republicans worked hard to ensure this legislation will pave the path to home ownership and the American dream for hardworking families who have been crushed for far too long by Biden inflation and Biden border crisis, which hiked housing costs by 30% and rent by 20%. Hey, MAGA Mike. It's now July 13th of 2026. Biden hasn't been in office for 2 years. Grow the hell up and act like an adult. You control all branches of government. Republicans, that is. You control the White House with Donald Trump, the House, the Senate, and the right-wing Supreme Court. Y'all are in charge, okay? And actually, it was a bipartisan piece of legislation. So why can't, I think this is what people hate about politics and why people hate MAGA Mike and why can't you just say with this one, this was actually something where the country came together because affordability is a good thing. By the way, Donald Trump didn't support this legislation. He refused to sign it, but it became law anyway. But this was a way to work together. Why do you try to divide the country over that issue as well? And that's why I think the American people see what the hell's happening here. They feel it in their pocketbooks. They see it in their bank accounts. They see the suffering that their family's going through. Then they see all those pieces of legislation, and they told their members, when you go back, we ain't doing Donald Trump Mount Rushmore, Donald Trump Peace Prize, Donald Trump federal holidays, Donald Trump Dulles, Donald Trump $100 currency. We ain't doing that. And so now you're seeing that get canceled and killed. We'll see what happens with reconciliation as it relates to the $350 billion defense package that Donald Trump now wants in order before the Defense Department goes bankrupt. Dude bankrupts. He's bankrupted everything his whole life. And then they bring on MAGAs like this MAGA Republican Senator Jim Banks. He was on the Sunday shows yesterday, and he was like, look, Trump's brought down the gas prices. Sure, they're going up now, but he did bring them down. And you'll see any minute now, Iran wants to come to the negotiating table. And once they come to the negotiating table and they beg us, they're going to beg us for the best deal ever. Then you'll see. Then the prices will go down. These are Bernie Madoff Ponzi schemers, these MAGA Republicans. Iran ain't doing that. After 5 months of this catastrophic war that you're now escalating, we're going back to, they want to do a deal with us. They don't want to do a deal. Their civilization is being threatened in an existential way. That's how they feel. Why? Because Donald Trump says, I'm going to blow up your civilization. I'm going to blow you all to smithereens. The people. That's what he refers to the people and says that. So they're rallying around to fight this. They don't want to do a deal with this. And every time they do one, like the Memorandum of Understanding, Trump and Netanyahu and Rubio, they violate it anyway. Anyway, here's what Banks says. Here, play this clip.
Where, Senator, in all this is politics, right, is the midterms. As the result of this conflict spiraling, the average price of a gallon of gas today is $3.88 nationwide. That is a lot better than $5, $6, but it is still a high enough number that it could cost your party the midterms.
Well, look, President Trump has brought gas prices down. Democrats for 4 years under Joe Biden fought to permanently increase the cost of a gallon of gas. And President Trump took immediate actions at the beginning of this second term to bring down gas prices. They have ticked up in the last week, but we know as soon as Iran can come to the table and understand that they have no other choice but to do what it takes to sign an agreement with the United States of America that they will never have a nuclear weapon, that they can't control the Strait, that they can no longer funnel money to terrorist proxy groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, that they can no longer get away with that, then gas prices will come back down to where we want them to be.
And then again, just to show you how divisive these MAGA Republicans are, I've obviously covered extensively here on the Midas Touch Network, the Lorenzo Araujo situation in Houston where he was killed by ICE and Border Patrol, Gestapo. So this MAGA Republican Congress member, he's asked, people are demanding answers. They want justice for Araujo. What do you make of it? And his response is, well, the real issue here are the illegals who do crime. I wish that people cared about the crime. Stop it. People do care about the crime. That's why there was a bipartisan piece of legislation to address the crime. Y'all root for the crime. Y'all root for sickness. Y'all root for the problems because you believe, well, you will all be the arsonists, and then you'll blame the people who try to fix it. And then you'll try to put out your fires and be like, look, we're going to fix the problems we created. Anyway, here's what he says. Play this clip.
Congressman, this story, of course, making a lot of headlines this morning. What questions do you have about this case?
Well, I wish there was as much concern about the illegal immigrants in this country who've committed horrible, heinous crimes like Lake and Riley and the like. We have millions of illegals in this country. Some are violent and some do wrong things.
So that's what's going on right now. We'll keep you posted every step of the way.